Bodleian Library stood as a beacon of knowledge in the small town of Oxford. However, its history was marred by tragedy and mystery. Legend had it that the library was built upon cursed ground where restless spirits roamed the earth seeking vengeance. One fateful night, Luna, a dedicated librarian, found herself alone in the library after hours. As she went about her duties, she heard faint whispers echoing through the empty halls. Brushing it off as her imagination, she continued her work until the whispers grew louder, more insistent. Suddenly, the books on the shelves began to fly off, pages fluttering in the air as if guided by an unseen force. Terrified, Luna fled to the safety of her office, only to find the doors sealed shut by an unknown presence. Panic gripped her as she realized she was trapped inside the library with something malevolent. Desperate for answers, Luna delved into the library's archives, uncovering the dark history of Bodleian. Centuries ago, the land upon which the library stood had been cursed by a vengeful witch, cursing all who dared to trespass upon it. Determined to break the curse and free herself from the library's grip, Luna embarked on a perilous journey through the hidden chambers and secret passages of Bodleian. Along the way, she encountered the spirits of those who had perished within its walls, their anguished cries echoing in the darkness. At the heart of the library, Luna discovered the source of the curse, a forgotten tome bound in human flesh, its pages teeming with dark magic. With trembling hands, she began to recite the incantations inscribed within, hoping to banish the curse once and for all. As the final words left her lips, a blinding light enveloped the library, and Luna felt a sense of peace wash over her. When she opened her eyes, she found herself standing outside Bodleian Library, the curse broken and the spirits laid to rest. From that day forth, the library stood as a symbol of resilience and triumph, a testament to the power of courage and determination in the face of darkness. When I was in university, I would take 7 courses every semester because I was doing a dual degree and I wanted to get it all done in 4 years. This meant a lot of semesters I was up to my neck and ears in homework and studying all the time. My university had a library that was open until midnight. I was also interning that semester, so I really had almost no time to do my work. I still lived on campus at this point, and my suite mates could be very loud and distracting sometimes. This was a Wednesday night. I had 4 classes that day and my internship. I also had 2 exams the following day, so right after I finished up at my internship, I went straight to the library. Our campus library was very big. When I got there at 8:30 p.m., there were still a decent number of people everywhere, but from 9 to 10 o'clock, it quieted down a lot, and I was planning on being there until 12 o'clock, studying for my 2 exams the next day. Around 10 o'clock, most people were gone, but there were still some around. I was sitting at one of the tables sandwiched between 2 bookshelves on either side, so it was a little more private and secluded where I was sitting, with fewer distractions. By 11 o'clock, some guy who looked to be in his upper 20s came into the section past one of the multiple empty tables and came to mine, where he sat down diagonally across from me at the table. I looked up, and he looked back at me and smiled as he was setting his books down. I looked back down and just tried to focus on my studying and not wonder too much why he decided to sit at my table. I was going through the slides to study on my laptop when the guy at my table said, "Excuse me," then asked me if I, by chance, was taking a specific economics course. I politely told him, "No, sorry," hoping that would be the end of it. But then he started explaining why he asked that, because his professor gives pop quizzes every day. I said, "Wow, that really sucks." Then I tried to go back to studying. Mentally, my mind wasn't completely into the material anymore. Now I was distracted by the presence of this man who I had a feeling was going to keep trying to talk to me. I looked up from my laptop screen and saw that man looking at me, smiling with his lips. I looked back down at my laptop, contemplating getting up and moving elsewhere or just leaving. He then asked my name. I made up a name and said, Linda. He said, "You have such blue eyes, Linda." This was when I started to wonder if this man was really here to study or creep on women, and the fact that he looked like he was almost 30 didn't help. I asked him what the name of his economics professor was. He took a second, then said, "Professor Luis." I asked if he knew the first name. He shook his head, no. I went straight to web and looked up any professors with the last name Luis at our school. Only one came up, a calculus professor whose last reviews were left years ago. I decided to get up and go ask the security worker at the front door for help. As I got up, I felt the stare of that man at the table watching me walk over to the security worker and tell him that this man was creeping me out, and I don't think he's a student. The security worker walked back over with me and asked to see the man's student ID. He started looking through his wallet, then his pockets, and then he said he must have left it at his dorm. The security worker then asked what dorm building he's in. The guy was clearly lying because he didn't know what to say and eventually just said, "I honestly don't remember what it's called." The security worker walked him out of the library and came back and told me to just be careful while walking back to my dorm. I thanked him. The whole rest of the time at the library, my mind was so distracted just thinking about what a creep that guy was. I did my best to keep studying, and around 12, I knew it was time to wrap it up so I could get some sleep. I packed up and left through the same way the security guard escorted that man out. He wasn't standing there at that moment. I don't know where he went. I started walking through the basically deserted campus. No one walks around that late on a Monday to Wednesday night. That's why eventually, when I was nearing my dorm building and I heard at least one loud sound of a shoe hitting the concrete behind me, I turned around but saw no one there. I knew for a fact I heard a footstep, though. I started to run now, which may have been a mistake because the second I started to run, which was made more difficult because of my backpack, I heard running footsteps behind me. I turned and saw that man from the library sprinting towards me. I screamed at the top of my lungs, but only for a second before I was tackled to the ground and had a hand over my mouth. He kept threatening me, saying, "You better shut up or I'll kill you." I genuinely thought my life was about to end. I was trying to call out for help still, but it was muffled by his hand. He then got to his feet and started to drag me by the throat out of sight of the main walkways. I saw he was dragging me in the direction of the woods right by the dorms. I managed to remove his hand from my mouth for just long enough to scream again. It was enough to get the attention of these two guys who came running over, yelling, "Hey, stop," at my kidnapper. The man let go of me and started running off towards the woods. The two guys came over to me, and I'm sure they were asking me if I was okay and whatnot, but I blocked all noise out for a few moments as I was in total shock. I completely let my emotions out and started bawling my eyes out. The two guys called university police, and I did my best to keep myself together and explain. We went to the library to ask the security worker for his description of the man as well. It matched my description of the man. The police were also able to use the footage from the library cameras to get a clear picture of the man's face. The picture was sent out to all students' phones, emails, and the school website. That same night, there was an anonymous tip that the man was at a late-night dive bar down the road from the school. The police arrived at the bar and arrested him. The level of trauma this induced on me was incredible. I can't even imagine the trauma for those who weren't as lucky as me in situations like this. When I was younger, I used to go to the library many times after school. This takes place when I was a freshman in high school. Back then, I did not have access to a computer with internet at home, so many times, when I was walking home from school, I would stop at the library. There was one that was roughly halfway back home from school and only a couple of blocks out of my way. I would do homework, play games on the internet, and go on Facebook and stuff. Most days, I would be there for a few hours and then walk the rest of the way back home. I went there on average maybe 2 or 3 times a week, but sometimes more or less. So, one day I went to the library after school and logged on to one of the computers. The library was pretty large, so large that it had 2 levels. Usually, there would be quite a few people there, but they were pretty spread out. I was on the computer and remember that I went on Facebook. When I did, I saw that I had a new friend request. It was from some random guy I didn't know. The profile picture was of a car, and I didn't recognize the name. But back then, I would automatically accept every friend request that I got. I didn't even care if I knew the person, so I accepted it and thought nothing more about it. Well, probably just about a minute after I accepted it, the guy sent me a message saying, "Hi." I responded back saying, "Hi," and was now wondering who he was. He responded, saying that he was in the library with me right now. This seemed kind of strange to me. I was not aware of knowing anybody at the library. I had never seen one of my friends from school there. The guy said that he was on the other side of the library and upstairs. I didn't really know what to think of it, and I don't remember exactly what I said, but the guy kept talking to me on Facebook. He soon started to ask me personal questions, so I decided to stop responding to him because he was coming across as a creep. I went on another internet tab and ignored it, but I kept seeing more notifications pop up that he was sending me more messages. This was really starting to creep me out, so I closed everything, logged off the computer, and then left. I had no idea who it was in the library. I walked straight home and hoped that I wouldn't encounter that man anymore. A couple of days later, I went back to the library again after school. Like most times, I found an open computer and logged on. I went on Facebook and saw several more messages from the guy. I didn't respond and just ignored them. He must have seen that I had logged on to Facebook. I know it shows other friends that are currently online. So he started sending me more messages. I didn't bother to look and continued to ignore him. Several minutes later, though, I suddenly felt a tap on my shoulder. I looked, and it was some guy I had never seen before. He was much older than me, had an uneven gray and brown beard, and was wearing a green hat. He then asked me why I wasn't responding to him. I was so surprised that I didn't say anything. The man then asked me to go with him. He said that he was leaving and motioned for me to get up. I said no to the man. He continued to stand there for about a minute before walking away. But the man only walked over towards the front of the library near the doors. I watched him sit down in a chair near the entrance and face me. I wanted to leave, but he was sitting right by the doors, and I would have to walk past him. He was just kind of watching me, and I felt like if I left, he would follow me or something. I stayed at the computer for a while. Every time I looked over towards the doors, I saw that the man was still there and often looking at me. I called my mom. Luckily, I had just recently gotten a cell phone. I told her about the situation and asked her to come and pick me up. She agreed. She had just gotten out of work, so it took her about 20 minutes to get there. But when she did, she walked into the library, and then we were both able to leave. When we got near the doors, the man kind of walked away. After leaving, my mom called the library and reported the whole thing. They were very quickly able to find out who the man was. The police even got involved, and the man ended up getting banned from that library. So, I was able to go back not too long after, and I never saw him again. Thankfully. I always considered myself an ordinary student studying at a small college in the town. I spent most of my time in the library. This place was always a quiet haven where I could escape from daily problems and immerse myself in books. But one night, everything changed. It was a Wednesday, and I was preparing for an important history exam. The library, as usual, was almost empty. Only a few students wandered between the shelves, and the librarian, Mrs. Lilly, sat at her desk absorbed in some old book. I chose a spot in the far corner of the library, where it was usually the quietest. Hours flew by, and I didn't even notice how closing time approached. Mrs. Lilly announced that the library would close in 10 minutes. I gathered my things and was ready to leave when I remembered that I had left my notes in the reading room on the second floor. In a hurry, I went up there, but when I returned, the entrance doors were already closed. Panic started to rise in me, but I decided that the best option was to find Mrs. Lilly and ask her to open the door. I began searching for her throughout the library, but she had disappeared. No trace, only silence and the dim light from the old lamps. Suddenly, I heard a faint sound. It was the creak of a door in the old part of the library, which was closed to visitors. I decided to check, thinking that perhaps Mrs. Lilly was there. Approaching closer, I noticed that the door was slightly open. I went inside and saw long rows of old bookshelves covered in dust. The air here was heavy and suffocating. My heart started pounding faster when I realized I heard footsteps behind me. I quickly turned around but saw no one. Maybe it was just the wind, I thought, but the feeling of unease didn't leave me. I decided to go further, hoping to find an exit. As I walked between the shelves, I heard the footsteps again. Now they were closer. I stopped and turned around, but again saw no one. This was starting to scare me. Suddenly, I heard a whisper. The words were indistinguishable, but they were clearly directed at me. I decided to find the source of the sound, no matter how scary it was. As I walked between the shelves, I saw light at the end of the corridor. Approaching closer, I saw an old storage room. The door was slightly open, and soft light poured from inside. I cautiously opened the door and peeked inside. On the floor sat a girl who looked like she had been there for many years. Her face was familiar. It was Mary, a student who disappeared last year. Her eyes were empty, and her hair was disheveled. "Mary?" I asked, not believing my eyes. She raised her head and looked at me as if seeing me for the first time. "Help me," she said quietly. I approached closer, trying to understand what had happened to her. She was holding an old book that looked very valuable. "What happened?" I asked, sitting down next to her. "I can't find the way out," she replied. "They won't let me go." "Who are they?" I asked, puzzled. She just looked at me with horror in her eyes and whispered, "The librarians." My heart started pounding faster. I didn't understand what she meant, but her fear was real. I decided we needed to act. We had to find a way out of here together. I helped Mary get up, and we started looking for an exit from this old part of the library. Several minutes passed when I realized we were constantly returning to the same place. The corridors seemed endless, and the shelves infinite. Suddenly, we heard footsteps behind us. Turning around, I saw a shadow moving between the shelves. We started running, trying to find an exit. The footsteps grew closer, and we got more and more entangled in the maze of books. Finally, we found a door leading to the first floor. Opening it, we found ourselves in a familiar part of the library, but here a new challenge awaited us. Mrs. Lily stood by the exit, looking at us with a cold gaze. "You shouldn't have gone into the old part of the library," she said. "We're just looking for an exit," I replied, trying to hide my fear. "The exit was always here," she said and opened the door. Mary and I quickly stepped outside, feeling the cold air engulf us. I turned to thank Mrs. Lily, but she was already gone. The library doors were closed, and silence reigned around us. After that night, I never returned to the library. Mary went missing again, and no one saw her anymore. I will always remember the horror I felt in the old part of the library. Sometimes at night, it seems I hear a whisper calling me back, but I know I will never cross that threshold again. Thanks for watching the video. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to watch the latest videos.